So my name is Simonetta Manfredi, and I'm Professor of Equality and Diversity Management at Oxford Brookes Business School. This event is part of the We Gate Summit 2021. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by really a fantastic group of women panelists. And if I start, I'll introduce them briefly, and then there will be an opportunity later on for them to say a little bit more about themselves. So I'll start with the scientist entrepreneurs, Dr. Olivia Champion, who is co-founder of BioSystems and Tech Nutrition, Dr. Ola Hekselman, a research fellow at Imperial College London, CEO and co-founders of Solveteq, Dr. Chiraz Ennaceur, CEO and co-founders of CORROSION Radar Limited, Dr. Fanya Ismail, who is founder and CEO of Soul Gel Materials and Applications, and Professor Linda King, who is co-founders of Oxford Brookes Technologies. She's also our Vice-Chancellor for Research and Global Partnerships. And all these women really represent a very interesting range of different scientific disciplines, ranging from chemistry, engineering, microbiology, and virology. But I'm also delighted to be joined by Maria Lundqvist from the Division of Innovative Finances at the European Investment Bank. So if I just start to ask all the, let's start with the scientist entrepreneurs to say a little bit about yourself. So if I can start with the going in alphabetical order, I'll start with you, Olivia Champion.
Hi, thanks, Simonetta. Yeah, so I'm a microbiologist by training. I did a PhD at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, working on molecular microbiology, trying to understand the genetic basis of how Campylobacter jejuni causes infectious disease. And I did a postdoc in Vancouver at the University of British Columbia, and then moved back to the University of Exeter. And I was working as a research fellow at the University of Exeter, still working on bacterial pathogenesis. And I realized that there was a need for a rapid model host in which we could screen our bacterial strains to look for mechanisms of virulence, and also to look for antimicrobials that may have activity against those bacteria. And I tested different potential model hosts and found that we could work with an insect larvae called Galleria melanella, which was not protected by a Home Office license. So, traditionally people would have to do those tests in mice, but obviously there's a stage before you work in mice and you want to actually be able to determine whether, to build up your hypothesis and test your hypothesis. And Galleria melanella was an excellent model for enabling, kind of rapid screens, high throughput screens before you kind of move that work and develop that work, or, and also for preliminary data for grant applications. But the problem that I had in my research was that there was no, people were using this model, they were using it around the world in, various labs. People were reporting using the model, and it worked well for my studies, but we were unable to actually access a reliable source of the larvae. And people were actually having to buy them as fishing bait or, from pet shops. And so, there's no way that you want to use your prize, kind of reagents and put them into something that you've just basically picked up in a bucket from a pet shop. And you don't know, you can't, it's very hard to control that kind of experiment. So I realized that there was this kind of need for a standardized supplier of these larvae, started to understand the market, who would need them. Was it more than just myself, would other people be interested, and realize that there was a market, and eventually set up my first company, BioSystems Technology, to sell these standardized Galleria melanella larvae, which we now sell all across the world. We sell them to about 19 different countries, mainly to academics working in universities, but also some companies who are working on antibiotic discovery. We've won some grant funding, so we've had Innovate UK funding and also Eurostars funding, developing an antibiotic discovery platform. And that company has been running since 2015, and it was kind of moving into the world of insects and looking at the various applications of insects, that I realized that there was this need for or an application for insects in the agri-tech sector. Insects as a sustainable protein source for animal feed. And so, and this took a while. BioSystems Technology had sort of got set up, it broken even, it was going well. And I, started to explore this other opportunity once the first business was kind of, was launched and had taken off, and founded Entech Nutrition as the second company, which is focused on insect technology, so producing insect ingredients for animal feed. And that company's still at a relatively early stage. We're kind of R&D intensive at the moment. We are developing our IP portfolio, and we've brought in some investment, but we're kind of in the investment raising stage of that company.
Thank you, Olivia. Ola, can I come to you?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ola Hekselman. I am a research fellow at Imperial College London. I'm Polish originally. I came to the UK about 10 years ago to do my PhD in chemistry in Scotland. And after this, I did 2 postdocs at 2 different universities. The second one was at Imperial. And up to that point, my research was on developing next generation materials for lithium-ion batteries. And after 2 postdocs, which is around 4 years, if you're in academia, you have to start thinking on your next step, whether it's going to be lectureship or some different role outside academia. And also focus on research that interests you, that is slightly different to what you've been doing. And for me, I wanted to combine my professional passion, which was batteries, but also personal one, which is environmental aspect. And for me, that was recycling. And I really wanted to move to recycling of lithium-ion batteries. But at the time, about 2-3 years ago, there was not much research going on in that field. But I was lucky enough to meet another academic at Imperial, Professor David Payne, who was working on recycling. He was leading a project on recycling of batteries, but there was a catch. It was recycling of lead acid batteries. So this is the little bit less sexy battery technology than lithium ion. So that would be a big shift for me professionally. However, the science behind the project was extremely interesting. And actually, one of the main reasons I've decided to switch was because lead recycling is causing a serious societal and environmental and humanitarian problem with informal recycling, when lots of people are suffering from lead pollution, especially in countries where regulation is not as strict. And actually, a recent report by UNICEF indicated that 1 in 3 children around the world is suffering from lead pollution that is coming from those informal practices. So for me, it was a big incentive to actually leave lithium-ion for the time being and then move to that project, and started working with David and his team. And we had some really good results. But actually, that was my third postdoc, but my approach was very different. I really wanted to do something more applicable, with higher impact and take it beyond university. So actually, very quickly, first results we got, instead of publishing an academic paper, we decided to patent this. And then with help from Technology Transfer Office, we started looking into commercial application. And luckily enough, at Imperial, we have a very good entrepreneurial ecosystem that supports us. And I was able to, with some small funding available for postdocs, I was able to reach out to industry, validate this idea with industry. It went really well, and therefore we decided to take it forward, and we incorporated the spin-out company, Solveteq, and develop this technology further to implement in real world. Our technology is based on proprietary solvents that we are developing here at Imperial, and we are not reinventing the entire recycling process, but we are addressing the most polluting, the most energy intensive part of it with our solvents. And we are able to do it at much lower temperatures with producing less hazardous pollutants. And overall, it's a faster process. So we have built our first prototype. We're very early stage. We are currently raising our first pre-seed round and received first big grant and completing spinning out process. So hopefully very shortly, in a matter of weeks, will be an operating spin out.
Thank you, Ola. That's fascinating. And Chiraz.
Thanks, Simonetta. So my name is Chiraz Ennaceur. I'm a CEO and co-founder of a company called Corrosion Radar, spin out of Cranfield University, and we have offices in Cranfield and Cambridge. So it all started for me as a civil engineer in Tunisia. And when I had my degree, I was always interested in innovation. So I decided to move to France to do my PhD in mechanical engineering, developing new technologies for non-destructive testing. So this is similar to the Doctor of Things, where we develop technologies like X-rays to see actually what's happening in things like pipelines, bridges, stuff that we use for in an industrial way. So after that, I did a postdoc in Amsterdam, and I realized that probably innovation in university is not for me. I wanted something a little bit more applied research. Moved to the UK, worked for the Welding Institute for 10 years, leading different research groups on similar things. So it's always in structural health monitoring, in asset management, how to keep our assets safe and running in a cost-effective way. After 10 years, going through different roles in terms of management, leading innovation teams, creating collaboration between university and industry, I wanted to do my own venture. Actually, after my PhD, I wanted to do create my own company, but at that time the ecosystem in France was not very favorable. So I left that dream on the back of my head, and then after having 10 years in the industry, I decided to go back to that. Also, after realizing that there is a huge need for a way to automate how to keep our assets safe. So then I joined forces with a team in Cranfield, who developed starting point of technology to monitor and predict failure mechanisms in safety critical assets for the energy sector, and so this is how Corrosion Radar was born. So our vision is really to enable a safer and sustainable world of energy, and that is by creating a digital solution. It includes sensing part of it, so hardware, but also a lot of machine learning and clever algorithms to really understand how things could develop in the future. So then you can take decisions in terms of avoiding really catastrophic failure. And here we are talking about safety critical assets, pipeline in the middle of the sea, and so failure have very big consequences to the environment, to the people, and to the assets themselves. So so the journey went from an IP that was created in Cranfield to taken forward to investment rounds and creating a team and really trying to deploy this all across the world, because that's where we find these safety critical assets, but also not only for today. We are also trying to see how we can help this energy transition. So we are talking about a lot of new greener way of generating energy, but we forget that these will push material to extreme. So we are talking about higher temperatures, higher pressures, and in order to make sure that we are bringing a new sustainable way of energy, we are also making sure that they are running safe. So our technology is also developed to make sure that we are supporting this energy transition to be in a much more safer and a greener way. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Chiraz. It's really exciting to hear about all these developments. I know that the theme of the summit is about the transition into the green economy. So this kind of technology will be really critical, I think. And so if I move on to Fania.
Thank you so much, Simonetta, for the opportunity. My name is Fanya Ismail. I'm the CEO and founder of SGMA. I'm a mother of three. By background, I'm Kurdish. I moved to the UK in the mid-90s. 5 years later, I won a scholarship from the Royal Society of Chemistry to do my PhD at the University of Manchester. Well, it was UMIST, which is merged with the University of Manchester, part of that now. My PhD was focused on a technology called Sol Gel technology, which is based on using sand extracts to make novel materials. And I used it for designing chemical sensors and biosensors. I moved to a career in academia after that. I worked for universities mainly. I worked for Queen Mary University of London, Kingston University, Manchester University. My last post was as a lecturer at Kingston University. And as you get more mature, you just start to think a bit more what really you want to do in life. Especially when my twins were born, I had to move away from academia because I couldn't cope with this 9-to-5 job anymore. So I took exam in law and I set up my own legal consultancy, working with investors and entrepreneurs from abroad who wish to invest in the UK and work with UK companies. And that opened my eyes more into the world of the business. But when my twins were grown a bit more and started to go to nursery, I started to look for new opportunities where I focus more of kind of product-driven business rather than service-based business, because you only have 24/7 to provide a service, really. So I started to look what opportunities exist out there, and I started to become keen into what people has been doing in my sector since I left it for about 3-4 years. I wanted to know what people have been doing, and it was very interesting to see that there was a lot of gap in the market. And what was mainly highlighted for me is that there was a lot of toxic chemicals pushed into the market, and I was horrified by the amount of these toxic products. And I was like, surely there's a better way of doing it. So I started to dig deeper into the opportunity, and I carried out my own research, 12 months, analyzing the landscape globally, where the gaps are, who is doing what, where the opportunity lies. And I found really a very interesting opportunity there. So I started to networking to see if the opportunity truly exists within the industry, because I never had any experience dealing with industry before. So I found actually people were really, really interested in the idea. So I applied for grant and I set up SGMA from scratch in 2017, where they developed a new technology platform tackling the mainly the plastic pollution and toxic chemicals within the entire chemical industry. The task has been huge. The technology platform that we have is unique. We focused mainly on intensive R&D and building our portfolio of patents. We currently have 9 patents filed, and SGMA is growing from strength to strength. We kind of, dealing with global packaging companies, from Europe, America, even people are contacting us from, Asia, Japan, and even Australia. So yeah, this is mainly what is it about us. And to be honest, what we know so far, and to the best of our knowledge and all the feedback, for the last 3-4 years, is just like we are the only technology in the world that it's 100% plastic and microplastic free, with the potential to solve the plastic pollution. So that's it really about us.
Thank you so much, Fanya, and I'm really looking forward to drink from plastic-free coffee cups.
So do I, and everyone.
Yeah. Linda.
Hello. So my name's Linda King. I'm really honoured to be the Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Research at Oxford Brookes. So I joined Brookes a long time ago in 1986, when it's actually Oxford Polytechnic. And I think I've been really fortunate in having a kind of dual track career. So I've gone through the traditional academic route, where I did my DPhil and postdoc in virology at the University of Oxford, and then moved to Brookes and transferred my research there. And I went kind of through that, to Reader Professor, head of department, and then into kind of academic leadership and culminating in the current role. But at the same time, using my research, which is actually insect virologies, to continue the first theme on insects. So I started off looking at insect viruses as a tool to control insect pests. But over a period of 10 to 15 years, what became really clear that these insect viruses, which are harmless to humans, can replicate really well in insect cells grown in culture. They can be scaled up to huge vats. And these viruses are really good at churning out protein. So we can put a foreign gene into the genome of the virus, use that as like a vehicle to transfer into insect cells, and the cells become like a factory producing lots of protein. And this is really useful in biotechnology and medicine. And it started off just producing protein for research purposes, for researchers to use. And then over the last probably 10 to 15 years, it's really been taken off by vaccine companies, gene therapy, where you can actually use the virus itself to enter human cells. It can't replicate, but it can deliver genes into human cells. So there are lots of applications. And I think it was in about 2000, the year 2000, that myself and my collaborator through all of this has been my husband. He's also an insect virologist, working in a different institution, but we've always collaborated together. And we patented our ideas for how to simplify this process. Because up until that point, making proteins using insect viruses was really tricky. You had to be like a virologist to do it. And what we did was simplify it. And that enabled anyone with a biology lab to make these proteins. So what's interesting in my journey is going from patenting in 2000 to actually spinning out the company was in 2007. And Brookes at the time was not used to spinning out companies. And it took a long time to convince our board of governors that it was a good thing to do and to get the money and everything to do that. So we eventually spun out in 2007, and the company's really taken off since then. And particularly the last 3 years, we've been developing and partnering with Public Health England, with the Jenner Institute, with companies worldwide to develop vaccines. And one of those has been a COVID vaccine, which is, so our technology has been used by Novavax for their COVID vaccine, which has done really well in trials. It's going through regulatory approvals in the US. And we're also working with a company through Innovate UK funding in Australia. So it took a long time in that kind of journey to actually spin out. And then it has become our life. And I've managed to juggle kind of an academic career with co-founding a company, but I chose not to move into the company. My husband did that bit. So he's the CEO of the company. And I also have 3 children, and they grew up, I think, hating virology, I have to say. And they gone into all sorts of other sciencey things, but not virology. So you know, that's my experience. And I think in my role at Brookes, what I wanted to do was make it easier and more, easier for other people to spin out companies and not take 7 years that I did. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I mean, with science, what we heard so far, I mean, the science is really amazing, but also it requires, I'm not a scientist myself, but does require investment, perhaps also at times when you don't know what the outcomes will be. And there is always a lot of public investment grants that goes in at that point. But I think this is a really good point to bring in Maria from the European Investment Bank. If you like to tell us a little bit about yourself. And maybe, Maria, this is also a good point to tell us a bit more about the bank. I know you have a few slides and what the bank can do to support these spin-out companies.
Yes, absolutely. You want me to go through the little presentation? I can.
Yeah, I think it might be a good time because the colleagues have spoken a lot about their
I think I will just start by presenting myself, and then I put on the slides, because I see that when I put on the slides, my face disappears. So you have to bear with me. Either you see me or you see my slides. But so no, first of all, thank you very much for letting me be in this panel this afternoon. So Simonetta, thank you very much. And I'm also very, as you mentioned, very glad to step in instead of my excellent manager Chiva, who could not join. So that's also a very good moment to be here. And also thanks for letting someone from the other side, let's say, join the discussion. So I really hope to bring in the financial side here. And if things are not clear, I mean, please feel free to ask. So my name is Maria Lundqvist, and I'm representing the EIB group, which is on the one hand is the European Investment Bank and also the European Investment Fund. And in a second, I will go through more where I actually work. And I'm originally from Sweden, but now for the past couple of years been based in Luxembourg, where we have our headquarters. But I do, however, have a connection to Oxford, because I was there many years ago studying English. So that's at least I know that it's an excellent little living museum. I felt always like going around. But now I'm a finance advisor. So I'm working for the Innovation Finance Advisory team at the EIB, and we are a small dedicated team of we all call finance advisors, let's say, but we work on advising startups and smaller companies, in particularly on improving bankability, and also contribute to policy and financial instrument development. And we work a lot also with ecosystem building. And we also advise candidates for the European Innovation Council for the Accelerator, which is a blended finance instrument initiated by the European Commission, which offers combinations of grants and equity investments. And innovative sectors of the expertise of our total overall team is it's broad. I personally work a lot within digital sectors, and in particularly deep tech, and now much related to artificial intelligence, to blockchain, to quantum. But then more broadly also we are involved in a lot when it comes to sustainability and the climate front. So I'm very glad that I hear both from Ola on the battery recycling and Chiraz on the supporting a safe and green energy transition. So I mean, the climate, we are, so to speak, the EU's climate bank. So really a cross-cutting theme in everything we do has to do with a green and a sustainable economy. But then another cross-cutting theme is, of course, the gender angle. And that is also something I hope to bring in a little bit here, because I work particularly within the tech industry. And as you all know, that the tech and the digital industries are growing tremendously. And if we don't make sure that the half of the population is in there, it's the gap will likely widen even further. And just to say, so I'm an economist by training, and I work for the EIB for the past now 6 years, and coming from the more investment side, dealing with the investments in digital technologies, in digital transformation of industries. So I will now put on my little, let me see.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we can see them well.
Okay, so now I guess you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to give you a little introduction into the EIB, I'll see if this. Yeah. So I will briefly go through what the EIB is, and then I will move on a little bit to explain the, because we did a study in my team, launched last year, and particularly looking at the female entrepreneurs and the access to finance, and then a little bit how we support women entrepreneurs and gender smart investments from the EIB side. And then as a fourth point, looking a little bit ahead and how we potentially could even increase. So just a little background on the of the European Investment Bank. So the European Investment Bank consists on the one hand of the European Investment Bank, which is the B, but then also our equity arm, so to speak, the European Investment Fund. And in fact, we are the world's largest multilateral lender in the world. We were established in 1958, and since then have provided more than 1.5 trillion of investments. So meaning that we are a very, very big bank, but on the other hand, we are quite unknown, which you sometimes really realize. And just to give a little bit of figures, so the financing last year for the EIB went up to 66 billion, plus 13 from the EAF side. And we are also a leading provider of climate finance. As mentioned, we are the EU's climate bank, and the green finance or green investments in particular reached 26 billion. And overall, we are governed by the member states, which is now the EU 27. And also our headquarters, they are in Luxembourg, and we have offices around the world. So in all the member states, but also outside. And in total, we are some 5,000 people, and we are not only having professionals within finance, but also engineers and economists and the social, environmental, and also gender experts. And recently, we have really been hiring a couple of extremely a good one on that front. And overall, we devote all our investments to critical priority areas from the European point of view, let's say. So it's on the one hand innovation, then it's environment, infrastructure, and small and medium-sized enterprises. So all our lending somehow fits into these priority areas. And how do we then support innovation and digitalization more in particular? So it's really about supporting innovation and skills. So under one of our public policy objectives. And over the last 20 years in total, that have been more than 200 billions of investments going into innovation and skills. And we support it through the development and the commercialization of new products, new processes, and new business models. And we also support R&D, education, upskilling, reskilling, training. But innovation is, of course, broader, and we also support connectivity, digital infrastructure, such as also broadband, mobile networks, and then also on the development side, but also on the diffusion and adoption. And innovation, there it comes also life science, which is also a very, very strong area where we are active. So I would say overall our innovation financing and innovation covers all types of sectors that you can consider having innovation projects, which is basically everything actually. But then more particular, moving into the main challenges that women scientists and women entrepreneurs are facing. So I would say that, I mean, as a starting point, innovation is difficult to finance. And as mentioned, I'm an economist, so I work a lot with market failures on the asymmetric information type of argument and externalities and so on. So innovation itself, it is difficult to finance. But then what we see is that in addition, if you are an entrepreneur and you are as well belonging to the group of people that I myself and most people here do belong to, which is women, yes, then it is difficult. So the study that we conducted, we did it together with the European Commission and also together with PitchBook. And it was launched, so yes, last summer. We particularly looked at venture capital financing. And why then venture capital? Yes, because it's a very influential industry, and venture capital in itself, it's a crucial enabler for developing and growing new technologies and technological companies. So it's really viewed as the leading edge, and that's also why in particular we looked at it. And the main challenges that we saw was, on the one hand, that really hurdles and biases persists. And I will come back to it in 1 second. But then also to overcome the knowledge and funding gaps, to really mainstream investment in female-led companies and make female investors the norm, and so to speak, de-gender or make it more cross-cutting. And then also that policymakers and all type of stakeholders, investors and financial advisors, we really need to work together, both now but looking ahead as well. So let me just zoom into this one, because this is really a key thing that we from the financial community are really seeing. So that if we start from the bottom left, let's say that, I mean, first of all, there is a lack of women entrepreneurs. And overall, these all hurdles, I mean, they reinforce each other. So the key is really to break the cycle. Then the question here, where do you break the cycle? Which is something we, of course, can discuss further today. But then there is also a lack of women making investment decisions. So here, speaking from the investor side, that there are much less female investors. But we also see that female investors are, in fact, 3 times more likely to fund other females. And here we're speaking about female CEOs. But they are making up only a very limited part of the total venture capital partners, roughly one in 10 only. And another important challenge that we see is that also the sector bias is really distorting investment in female-led companies, because investors look towards funding women in traditionally feminine fields, which makes it very difficult for women that are not in those type of sectors to actually succeed in raising financing. And here, in particularly, when it comes to digitally advanced sectors or technologically advanced. So this is absolutely crucial to change. So really the perception of what women are now making marks here in the air, but what we are able to do, because this is, I mean, if we look into cybersecurity or quantum technologies, I mean, the share of women is very, very, very low. And another thing that we see is that public institutions are absolutely involved in supporting female-led companies, but the support is very much limited to the early stages, so the seed stage or Series A, which then leaves female founders with very little options for growth capital and really this to scale up the business. And we have also seen some similar results more recently. We are working together with some other investors on this as well, and we really see that there is a substantial gap when it comes to venture capital. I'll just say, take an example here that last year, Unconventional Ventures, they published a report on the venture capital funding in the Nordics, showing that over the last 4 years, women have received 2.2% of the total, I think it was 9 billion or so that was totally invested in the Nordic startup landscape. So, and that's only for let's say female only founders, and then of course you can look at mixed team and so on, and then the figure becomes up to 10%, 11%. So it's still, in terms of risk capital, the message is clear. And I'm not absolutely not hopeless. I think there are many things we can do to improve the situation. But let me move on. So what do we then do from the EIB side when it comes to supporting women entrepreneurs and gender smart investments? I would first say that, I mean, gender equality is absolutely one of the founding values of the European Union, and also a key objective of the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's also, I mean, it's key in what we do. But also that investing more equally is also simply smart economics. So empowering women is really, it's key to enhance business productivity and to catalyze economic growth, and also when looking at social cohesion and justice. And from the bank side, I mean, we see that, I mean, it's our duty to ensure that the projects we finance, and particularly linked it to the large volumes of finance that we provide, that actually all this money is flowing towards the right hand, let's say, so that everyone have the same or as equal opportunities as possible to really benefit from our business. So what you see here is on the financing side more overview of a couple of things that we actually support more concretely, and I do not intend to go into this into depth. But what I want to highlight is that we really support companies, and here maybe in this context of today, that early stage companies or research spin-outs. So we also help with the EIC, so the European Innovation Council Accelerator, and the EIC Fund, which is now just entering into its full-fledged instruments with a total budget of more than 10 billion to really support game-changing innovations throughout the life cycle. So really from the early stage research to commercialization, and also to the scale-up phase. And what is very important when it comes to the EIC and the new multi-financial framework overall from the European Commission is that there are several actions that have been taken in order to further support female entrepreneurs, and in particular for the EIC, that at least 35% of these supported companies should really be female-led. And then there are also several other non-financial supports, such as business acceleration services and investor matchmaking and so on. And then if we move up let's say the business stage of development to the startup and more emerging companies, what we have here is something called the innovation or the Innofin SME guarantee, where we also, through the European Investment Fund as well, can provide, for example, credit lines. And then if we move even further, when we are speaking about more small, we are still speaking about small companies, but a little bit bigger, with the EIB Venture Debt, which is a very successful product that was launched a couple of years ago, which is a type of quasi-equity financial instrument that really aims to support innovative, high-risk companies, but still at a little bit later stage. And then if we move even further, we support intermediaries, banks, through through multi-beneficiary intermediated loans. And then, of course, we also do direct corporate loans or loans to the public side. But just to give an example of how we actually try to support female-led companies. And then in addition to, so first of all, yes, we do provide support beyond financing through, for example, market intelligence, coming through the study that I mentioned. And then internally, we are also just in the process to update our EIB Gender Action Plan. And then we also collaborate with various fund managers and also other investors to really tackle the gender bias, and in particular when it comes to the venture capital market. And as mentioned, so gender is really a cross-cutting theme in everything we do, and even more so now than ever before, I would tend to actually say. And then just looking a little bit ahead, and to look into some of the recommendations that we actually came out with from the study, but also from later work, that policy really plays an important role. And we see that countries with more gender equality priorities and they also tend to have more female-led companies. And also we have a knowledge gap that still needs to be bridged. And here it has a lot to do with educating investors and how to avoid biases, really looking into the potential of female-led companies and seeing it as a company rather than a female-led company per se. But of course, it's easier said than done sometimes. And then looking at the overall ecosystem, and it's as I also briefly mentioned, that it's when it comes to both these hurdles and biases that reinforce each other, so does also a flourishing ecosystem, let's say. So if we somehow are able to let's say cut the circle at some point and create this type of self-sustaining system with startups, with investors, that is absolutely key, and this is something we are working on very much. And then when it comes to what potentially could be done more on the innovative, new innovative financing instrument that could be tailored rather for female-led spin-outs. So here I'm thinking about potentially co-investment programs or platforms or even some type of gender bonds, but I'm also happy to discuss this more in detail. So I think I will stop there, and if you have any questions, I mean, of course I'm still here. So even if you cannot see me now, maybe.
That's great, Maria. It's really encouraging to hear how much effort the European Investment Bank is putting into this issue. And I'm really interested about this idea of the gender bonds, but perhaps we can explore that a bit further. But before I really would like to have a reaction from our scientist entrepreneurs, because you all have gone through the process of seeking funding. And what would you say to the bank in terms of having a representative from the bank and having heard some of the initiatives that they are undertaking? Based on your experience, what would you say? What would you be what you think would really help? Chiraz, I see you on my screen. Can I start from you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I went through different funding rounds myself, and I have to agree that I don't think I ever pitched to a female, either representing the investment firm or as an investor herself. So that is something surely we would like to see a little bit more. of that. One thing actually was not in the presentation, but I would like to mention is the role model is very, very, very important in entrepreneurship, and a role model and encouraging female to go through that path should not start only from the university. I think there's much more work to be done with little girls as well, where entrepreneurship could be introduced as another alternative to build a career. And I think we are really not doing a lot on that side. So probably a question to Maria, if that's something that is included within your program, because I think if we worked out at that stage, things probably will get easier as things develop over time.
Thank you, Chiraz. Anyone else who wants to comment on the funding? Olivia?
Yeah, I would. So I think that from my experience of starting a business, I think that what's really important is to have the support or the upskilling to be able to create a financial model, or to have access to people who can support with creating a financial model, because that can often be really daunting. And obviously, you know, when it comes to investment, that's one of the key things. People, they're interested in the tech, you know, the problem that you're trying to solve. But when it comes to investment, really what they're looking at are the numbers, you know, what's the return on investment? And at early stages in a company, when there's still a lot of risk associated with the tech, there's, you know, it's hard to show in those early stages the return on investment. You have to go through those steps of kind of gradually de-risking, you know, building up the valuation of the company. And it might take several rounds of investment over a number of years until you can actually show that return on investment. And I think that is a barrier to all people, but particularly women, who may not have that expertise or that experience or have the access to people who can support them. So that would be one area that I think is you know, where people really need support and is a problem. And the other thing I would just like to ask is, in the wake of Brexit, do UK companies still have access to these various support mechanisms that you've mentioned?
Yeah, it was on my mind as well, Olivia. Maria, what is the situation?
Yeah,
Sorry, we put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I mean, we are all, yeah. So when it comes to certain instruments, UK is absolutely still in, let's say, but there are still ongoing negotiations exactly on certain. Yeah, on certain instruments, and in particularly at the earlier stages, how whether or not to be included. So, I mean, as much as I would say yes, absolutely, I'm fortunately I can say let's see and let's hope. But then to come to Chiraz, to come to your point, because actually what we have within the EIB, I mean, first of all, I fully, of course, agree with your comment. With the EIB, we also have something called the EIB Institute, which is really on partnerships with academia. It's about research funding. It's also about providing research grants to research center and universities. That are particularly working on topics, of course, somewhat related to the EIB. But then we also have at even earlier stages summer school, which is a 10-day program for graduate students to, I mean, it's more on learning about the core activities related to the EIB, but I mean, potential development of that type of activities could be even more towards the women entrepreneurs type of focus, let's say. And of course, there are also opportunities collaborating with the EIB and universities, research institutions when it comes to consulting, webinars, guest professors, and so on. So that's something that really could be explored further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's good to hear that there are, I mean, I know that the Horizon Europe program is still open to the UK. So hopefully also there is still discussion going on and some of these companies could benefit from some of your instruments. Is there any other comments on this question, either of the funding of, or do you want to, any other points that you want to make? Just looking at Ola.
Sure. I could not agree more with Olivia and Chiraz. It's one of the very important things I find is to have role models in your life from early on, actually. So that really helps, and was quite important for me that I knew women who were leading their businesses and see how it looks, that it can be challenging. It's not straightforward. It's not just successes and glory and events and shine, being shiny star. There is a hard work and challenges, but then having support along the way. And what Olivia said, sometimes to be honest, I'm a scientist. When I started the journey, I had no business knowledge whatsoever. And I was lucky enough to be able to reach out to people, and they were extremely helpful. But it's really the knowledge that I gained from asking people, building networks and looking for support. And very often it was from other women. And actually, I have to say that I find it easier to reach out to women and speak with them openly. I think if more often than not, we are in a male-dominated environment, and you do really, I at least find myself, you do want to seem professional. You don't want to show that you don't know something. I think it's easier and more relaxed atmosphere when you are with other women. And I was, during my pitching event so far, I was able to pitch to other women, and they were extremely helpful. Even if they would not be able to help me at that point, they would introduce me to someone. And that applies to other men, but especially for women, I can feel that there is a sense of community, something that Maria showed, that female investors do invest in women, and that's really great. And I think our responsibility going forward is to support other women as well. And I think men do that intuitively, but for us, it's quite important, especially now while we're still in a minority.
Yes, I was quite struck also by that comment that research shows that female investors are more likely to fund, to support women investors. So it's important that community does diversify. If our member of the audience can see some questions start to appear in the chat, feel free, please, to put questions to us, to our panelists. There is one here, for example, which is about, does it all start at home with nurturing girls towards risk-taking rather than being safe? Do we live in a world that allows such upbringing when other safety concerns are still at the forefront of our minds? Is anyone on the panels that you would like to comment on this, offer any thoughts? Fania.
Can I start with answering this question, since I'm a mother of twin girls and they are turning into 13 years old on the 20th of October. So I think it's rather than training them to be risk takers, I would say rather training them to be independent, how to find their way no matter what is it that they want to do. So whatever it comes up in their mind, a question pops up, instead of making it so easy to answer them, the answer for that question, train them how to go and find the answer for that question. So in this way, they will train on how to find their way in life as they grow up. So if they have, they do their homework, they come across a question, train them how to find their way. And slowly, not only it's good for them, but it's good for you as a mother as well, because then they become more independent in doing their homework and progressing in their career as well. So training them to be independent, I think, is the key, because then they will learn how to become a risk taker, because they will assess the situation before they take the risk as well. Because it's important. It's not about just jumping into a situation and taking the risk. It's more of like how you actually assessing the situation and enable you to make a decision. For me, I never worked into a room where the decision maker was a female so far in my journey. Working on an SGMA and previously as well, apart from the academic world, but in the business world, I have not walked into the room where a decision maker was a female. So to enable that to change it's that we need to train them from a very early age how to find their way in life, whatever they want to do on a daily basis, and that grows as they go along. That's probably my input.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fania. That's any other comments on this point, the role models and the importance also for helping, girls?
Yeah, can I add something?
Yes, please.
Okay, I want to first agree with Ola on the network, and for me, actually, I forgot to mention earlier, it all started from a program called Enterprise Wise, which was led by Cambridge Judge Business School. It was only 2 weekends where it's all female from the academia and from the industry to support and encourage them to set up their own business. And for me, I did these 2 weekends and resigned straight away after that. So it only took, as I said, two weekends to really see that and take a decision. And I wish there are many of those programs, because I'm sure there are a lot of women out there, they have that idea in their head and they just needed that little push, needed to see someone else who did it and ask herself, why not me? And it's something that I think we need to invest more into that little bit of a gentle push in a really safe environment, and seeing people like you doing the same thing. Back to the kids, I have a daughter as well. And it's funny because she's nearly 12, just finding her way in life and herself. But when she talks about work and job and how she will be in the future, in her head there is no other option other than just doing her own business, launching her own company for green energy. Or I'm like, yes, she doesn't know it probably yet. That's probably she's got an entrepreneurial mindset in her, but I'm really pleased. And I think because she's seeing it in practice, she's seeing her mom doing it, it becomes a natural thing. And this is where the role model, I think, comes into picture. And I wish that we can show more and more into the schools. And I'm doing my part, also going to the schools, talking about things like this to little girls, and having little girls coming to my company to show them women in engineering, women in entrepreneurship. But we need much more than that. And I think we should tackle it at that level.
Yes, the power of role models. There is also something that I would like to talk about. I mean, when we were presenting your companies, I thought, I was just making a few notes, and there was something that, a theme that emerged very clearly. All of you, I want to do, I'm a scientist, but I also want to make sure that my science does something, benefits society, not just a theoretical scientist, either in the lab or spending a lot of time on developing theories, but something more applied. That's a word that came up from some of the conversation. I think, Linda, I'd like to ask you also, as a university leader, are we at a point where perhaps we should think about academic careers differently? Because some of the panelists, some of them have started in academia, then set up their own business, really. Is there perhaps the traditional, let's say, academic job might be fine for some people, but are we at the junction where perhaps we should look at something a little bit more dynamic between academia and industry, entrepreneurship? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's been really interesting just listening to the discussion that's being on, because traditionally, and as you know, Simonetta, at Oxford Brookes, we have different pathways for promotion. So we have a research pathway. We do have a knowledge exchange pathway, which would include recognising spin-outs as a knowledge exchange pathway. And then we have a kind of leadership pathway. So we do have these different pathways, but I think what we've been experiencing, particularly the last couple of years, is people coming forward that don't fit quite neatly into those particular pathways. And I think that's something that we're discussing within Brookes at the moment, is how do we recognise and in our criteria to make sure it's transparent for people about those that are increasingly that hybrid pathway. And I think we're particularly seeing that crossover between research and the kind of broad knowledge exchange. and whether that is making more opportunities for people to dip into industry, to come back. I mean, there are lots of different schemes that allow that, but there isn't anything, for example, that we would fund and promote ourselves to do that. I mean, we do have a lot of schemes that support enterprise development in the university, including one that is dedicated for women. And I think what's been said about role models and also getting to people early, and obviously from a university, the earliest we can get people, is largely through when they join as an undergraduate or come in through, a PhD student pathway. And we have been really trying to build far more support and development for entrepreneurship within our schemes, but they are still not integral into a curriculum, for example. They still sit outside that. They're not integral into PhD programs. They sit, people can do it, but it's something extra. And I think what we could really think about doing is trying to integrate it so it becomes part and parcel of programs rather than something you have to do on the side. So I think, but you have to build it from the start so it becomes the norm. And you have to find where do you start. So there's lots of ideas actually listening to you talk that we can discuss later and think about maybe some pilots of things. So it's interesting.
Right. Can I just add to that, because BioSystems Technology is a University of Exeter spin-out company, and it was only, I think, the second spin-out company that I was aware of anyway from the university. And previously there had been no interest at all in the creation of spin-out companies, and it had been kind of discouraged, if anything. But what happened was when the REF changed the metrics upon which universities are assessed. So previously universities were assessed based on publications and grant income. And another metric was introduced to assess the performance of universities, which was impact. And one way that you could measure impact is through the creation of spin-out companies, where you're showing this applied application of the research into society. And BioSystems Technology was actually a critical impact case study for the University of Exeter for the most recent REF 2021. But I think the issue is that this new metric has been introduced, but maybe universities haven't quite caught up in how they support the demonstrating, and adding their kind of impact case studies. So they still have the systems in place to support academics who are, publishing and winning grants, but there isn't that kind of, as you said, that kind of pathway that I'm aware of in many universities. Then there's some fellowships, there's industrial fellowships, BBSRC industrial fellowships that people can apply for. But as for universities, this metric is now so important. It's actually, we're talking about encouraging these younger women into starting spin-out companies, but we shouldn't forget, and we should actually emphasize that it's a really high-risk activity. So if you leave, one potentially secure job and to start a spin-out company and to go down that route of commercializing your research and creating a spin-out company, the facts and figures show that around 9 out of 10 startup companies fail. So it's incredibly high risk. And for women who, for their careers, it also may be a difficult time in terms of juggling, starting a family. We've talked about our kids. I've got 3 children as well, as many of the other panelists here. And, it's a difficult time in your career where you're trying to juggle moving forward with your career. You can't put your foot on the pedal as hard as you would have done pre-children, because you have so many other, things that you have to think about in terms of juggling your home life responsibilities. But also, you do still need to have an income, and reliable income, because you have to pay for the nursery fees, mortgage, rent. And starting a startup company is incredibly high risk. And really, I do think that universities, as the, spin-out companies have become such an important metric, there ought to be some form of industrial route in the, and maybe that is being, explored at the moment, but I think it is an important thing to consider.
Yeah, if I can just come back on that. So what we've done at Brookes, our latest spin-out, is allow people to take secondments. So that right. takes away some of that risk. So both for people that have been in permanent roles, but also postdocs that were absolutely involved in the spin out. We've allowed them to go into the company, but actually for 2 years, and then if it doesn't work out, they can come back into their academic roles. So that provides a bit of, particularly for, as you say, for people that are at that critical stage. So I think that's something that we wanted to do to enable them to kind of take that jump and give it a try, but also that they have that academic job to come back to if they choose to, whether or not the company is successful, they might want to jump ship at that point, or whatever. But that's what we've tried to do to enable, and that's what people were exactly saying to us. So we've kind of adapted our kind of schemes to allow that and support that. Also a package of support that we provide using high funding to enable them to get some of those skills, or to access the skills that you need to actually run a business. So because I remember when we set our company up a while ago, we didn't have any of those skills. So now we have a package of support which people can choose who they use that funding to go and get that support from, but it's a reasonable package, and it's available to those that are in that absolute process of spinning out, gain those skills. So I think we are moving in the right direction, but there's also a lot more to go. And you're absolutely right. The REF, it was a game changer when impact case studies came in. I think universities are catching up with that kind of pre-support, which is why I think really integrating support and opportunities that are absolutely integrated into programs. So one of the things that I'm discussing with people at Brookes is do we go to the point where all our PhD students that we fund ourselves, because we invest a huge amount of money, university money, in PhD scholarships, for all of them, do we give students a 3-month placement so they can go into industry, can do something outside their PhD, which gives them a chance to explore different things? So many of the Research Council funded PhD schemes do that. So one we're involved in jointly with the University of Oxford in biosciences. All the students get 3 months in industry. But that's just a relatively small number of students, and what we're trying to do is trying to think about, do we expand that scheme to give all our PhD students the chance to do that? Because those are the stages I think that we should be working at, rather than leaving it until someone's mid-career researcher.
Yeah, that is good to hear that there are these new things emerging, and also kind of safety net. Now, I'm aware that Ola will have to leave us soon, but before you go, Ola, I think it probably would fit very well your experience. You also benefited from an entrepreneurial fellowship.
Yes, thank you. I want to say that what Linda mentioned, and having support quite early on would be very useful, because what I found that as a scientist, I did 2 postdocs, so I've spent in academia 10 years or so, and stepping outside and speaking to industry, or speaking to investors and finance people, lawyers, I was really lacking the language. It was a huge gap in business knowledge, and preparing a cash flow projections and business plan, and even pitch deck. So there is lots of that support around already, which is great. But I think, in a way, it would be useful, and I'm speaking now about Imperial experience from Imperial perspective, that actually the student support, entrepreneurial support for students is very well developed, but it wasn't as developed to later stage or early stage researchers. Whereas actually, I believe that we generate IP during our work as postdocs usually would, and IP is probably the biggest asset when you go and spin out a company. So it would be really helpful to have that support also for a later stage beyond PhDs. And from my conversations with academics, I've heard very often that professors or maybe readers, they say, I would love to do that, but I never have time. I would like my postdoc to go and do something like this or try that. So usually more senior academics don't have time to do it, but it's something on their radar, but they cannot commit to it. And creating opportunities for their more junior staff to do that would be extremely helpful. But this is something that I did notice, that many of us jumping into this entrepreneurial journey a little bit later, we are not having that business language, and we have to catch up, which is obviously possible. But I did benefit from support from Imperial College London, where we had small entrepreneurial programs, but I also was awarded Faraday Institution Entrepreneurial Fellowship, which came with pot of funding that really enabled me to stay at university, but not to do this typical postdoc role where I'm focused and I'm judged based on the number of papers. And actually this funding was quite flexible, so I was able to pay for some consultants who short-term consultants who would help me with that business side of the company and prepare the way for actually jumping and having Solveteq being a full company like it is going to be now. So it was critical. This bridge would be great, and we were incredibly lucky to have support from the department as well, who enabled that. So definitely university support to at this very early stage, transition stage, is really helpful, and the risks the whole process, I believe.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you very much, Ola, for that contribution. I think, yes, what you said is really things that de-risk, but also what caught my attention, you used the word bridge, bridging between academia and businesses. If there are questions from our audience, please feel free to ask, put in the chat. And on that theme of bridge, instead for you, Fania, you actually did the startup, so you didn't have a benefit of this whatever support university may be able to do.
I'll just switch off. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you,
Bye.
Ola, for joining us, and all the best.
Nice meeting you, Ola. Take care. So for me, it was all from scratch on my own, no support from university or anything, because I had to leave my career when the twin girls were born, and I already had my son at the time. So for me to start from scratch, I knew it was going to be a very, very high risk. And I knew that I'm going to suffer, and I had to plan very well for it and think of it for about a couple of years before I commit myself and my family towards this journey. I left academia for 5 years, my career for 5 years, before I started thinking about anything to do with the SGMA. And there was no funding, not from bank, not from university or any organization, because I wasn't affiliated with anyone anyway. So I had to take a less risky option. So through attending networking, I came across Enterprise Europe Network, which is currently part of Innovate UK, and they're called Innovate UK Edge, I believe. So through the Southeast manager that's in charge of the area, I explained my idea and I said, that's what I want to do. I'm not very clear exactly about the vision at the time, because I wasn't, right at the beginning, you don't have that clear vision of what you have now. But I explained to him what's my unique USP and what is vaguely my vision would be for the company. So he started to meet me several times, and then we started to give it more of a shape of what is I want to do. And then he said, okay, let's look at the current funding available and see which one would be the best. So we started from a small grant from Innovate UK in 2015. And I got the grant. It was about £5,000 only for me to hire the facility for me to test my theory, because I designed the molecules using pen and paper on my kitchen table. So I had to test it to see if it works, these molecules. So that £5,000 allowed me to test it, and it worked. And then what after that? I had the fund, the 5,000's finished. Where am I going to go? It's just like we proved the concept on the lab level, but it's not a business yet. So it's very hard to get, from private investors, from the bank, even committing ourselves to get into a big grant application. It was not possible because I had limited knowledge about writing grant applications, and also I had limited access to finance to support getting somebody to write the grant application for us. So I turned to my family and I said to them, look, this is what I have made, what are your advice, how you can support me? So my family came together and said, like, what do you need? I said, all what I need and access to the lab so I can complete the optimization for one particular industry, because coating is applicable to multiple industries. And I had to optimize it and do a market search to see which industry I need to focus on. So I said, I need access to the lab. I said, how you can do this? I said, the university will take a big chunk of the IP. So I can't go to the university and say, I need to do any deal with any university. I need to remain independent for me to make sure that I get a strong infrastructure for this company in place. So my family got together and, put some fund together, said to me, go and get your own place. And even with their fund, it took me 2 years to get my own place because it was so hard to get license in place to deal with chemicals and also to get insurance in place. And also starting communicating with the customer. Being the single founder, it was really hard with having 3 young children. Until, and then I managed to set up the facility. When I had the keys to my own place in 2017, then we set up SGMA. I made it very quick. Within 9 months, I optimized the product for the packaging industry. And that was because it was very big hit. And it was like kind of, the technology was very strong. We could demonstrate the prototype. I developed the prototype and we managed to get the, private investors, equity investors and angel investors, basically. And yeah, this is how I have made my way through. And now last year we raised, during the lockdown, we raised £500,000 on Angel's Den platform. I identified some key awards where we applied to, and we won some major awards. I won the Women in Innovation Award, which came with £50,000, no conditions attached to it. It's about from being a role model, trying to inspire others, and with a package of support, which was great for us. And also last year I won the top award of the Diamond Prize at Mass Challenge Switzerland, and I was the first female to win the top award ever. So these all gave more publicity to our technology and our company. And the fund that came along, it was really good because, it came as a prize, and, £125,000 was a lot of money for us last year. And now we are moved to the stage where really we are in a very unique, exciting stage where we're trying to commercialize the technology. So we towards finish most of the scaling up. We're reaching the final stage. And we are in a very close discussion with our partners, even about commercial investment rather than any equity investment. So we're moving into further bigger step. So yeah, this is how we made it, not through conventional way of going to VCs or banks or anything, because it was very hard for me as a single founder, not affiliated with big company or university, to build it up from scratch. Trust me, it was such a hard work.
It does sound really hard work in doing it this way, but nonetheless, many congratulations. I mean, you did it brilliantly. But this brings me a couple of things that perhaps I want to bring in Linda and Maria. And by the way, to the audience, please do feel free to put in questions if you wish. to Linda, I mean, someone like Fania, I know that we got this development at Brookes about an enterprise center, but is it, Fania said that she wanted to remain independent, so she didn't want to go with a university. But is there a role also for university to support independent scientists who want to remain independent, but they need, for example, access to a lab? We heard all the difficulties that Fania had with the licensing, etc.
Well, it's interesting because, as you know, we have our bio-innovation hub, which are labs, and actually, and we're building on those for a full enterprise center, which will be open to Brookes startups, spin-outs, but also the community. So because Oxfordshire are putting funding into that as part of recovery from COVID. So it absolutely will be open to people that are nothing to do with the university. And currently we have 2 small startup companies who are people that have worked for the University of Oxford. They want to do startups and have nothing to do with the University of Oxford because it's nothing to do with IP in Oxford. So they have come to our, if you like, bio-innovation hub, and they're nothing to do with Brookes. We have no IP, but they get the same full support. Obviously, that they have to pay a rent to use facilities like any company would, but it's pretty modest, and they get the full support, of technical support and things in the labs, and they can rent just a meter space if they need it. So I think that there are places that you can go to do that, but you do need some funding, because it's not free. So it is about getting hold, I think, of those small bits of funding. But certainly our enterprise centre, and bio-innovation hub going forward is completely open to people outside the university. Absolutely.
And to Maria, so that is, I hope, Fania, do you think that would be helpful? What you heard?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people would be hearing and they found it very useful, but we are actually moving to Kent Science Park now. So we're going into bigger premises, and we have advertised for 3 jobs. We're taking 3 more people in. So the company is growing, but at the moment we're based in Kent, and the plan is to stay a bit more in Kent, although we are expanding into Europe, and we also already going to have our site somewhere in Europe, which I can't disclose at the moment, but we're already building our site in somewhere else in Europe as well. So we're expanding as a company to go beyond that. So yeah, I think a lot of people will be hearing that and finding it very useful as well.
So at the beginning, when you were at the beginning of a journey, something like Linda described could be possibly helpful.
Absolutely, but in our area there was none of this, so there was no access to any of these facilities whatsoever, and that's why I had to set up my own one from scratch, because I could not access anywhere else, that where I could remain independent, but I could access to the proper standard facilities that I was looking for chemical industry. But I think that would be very, very useful for a lot of people who are in the beginning of the journey, where I was kind of about 6 years ago.
Thank you. Yes. And Maria, if I can bring you in and ask, so from the point of view of the investment bank, you've heard about some of the challenges here. Can you tell us a few things that could be helpful, for example, for both for an independent scientist setting up the startups, and from a point of view of the universities?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, there are of course many things, but one point that in particularly I would like to bring in this role of the digital innovation hubs, or innovation hub as such. I think they can really be key in I mean, first of all, get access, but also to get access to to the facilities, but also to network contacts and so on. So if there could be, of course, some type of grant scheme that could support, as you mentioned, I mean, obviously everyone has to pay the rent to use it, but so that could absolutely be one way at the earlier stages. But then also when it comes to networking, because this is also a point that I would like to come back to a little bit, because this is, I mean, when you get access to the network, let's say, but it's not about being a part of you don't need a huge network, let's say. I mean, you need the right people, and you also need the people that encourage you. So I mean, if we from our side in some way could facilitate the setup of such network, either, I mean, you can have from the university side, from the business side, but of course also from the investor community, because what also was mentioned that I think it was Ola that said it, that she said I don't have the business language, and this is something we see also when it comes to technologies. We speak a lot about bringing finance to science and science to finance, and I think this is very much applicable here as well, to really start speaking the language of the other side, whatever that other side might be. So yeah, if I think there we could play a role, absolutely, in helping to facilitate that type of community setup, let's say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I don't see, is there any questions from the audience? I don't see any more questions in the chat. So I think perhaps we can try to bring this session to a close. But before we do that, can I ask each of you on the panel if you want to offer a final comment, thoughts? I mean, the reason for doing this is, as I said at the beginning, to really put scientists, entrepreneurs, women on the map and on the radar, and raise awareness, having the benefit of yourself as role models. But I think there is still much work to do. So we started a conversation, but I'm really very, very keen to continue it. So if you like to conclude, to offer some thoughts about what can we do, what we can do next to really provide some concrete, some help. Olivia, you started. I'll come back to you. I'll get back to you again if I can ask you some final thoughts.
Yeah, I think my thoughts would be, as I said, that 9 out of 10 startups fail, and so for women in particular, I think we can kind of be hard on ourselves, and we can sometimes we can have this expectation that we can do it all, and we're going to have the successful business and the family and everything, and we can put a huge amount of pressure on ourselves. And I think sort of with that context, I would say 2 things. First of all, this word resilience that is bandied around a lot, I think is really important. But really what resilience means, I think, is about being flexible and able to kind of move as things adapt. We've been through this terrible 18 months with the pandemic, and I would add Brexit, which has been really difficult for many businesses. And being able to just kind of move with things and be resilient and adapt as things change is really important. And I think having role models around us, and not just role models, but also mentors, like not just looking at people, but having people that we can engage with and actually talk to and learn from, is really important. And sort of coupled with that, I would say also self-care. So a lot, we've had this really hard time, and there'll be no doubt ongoing, challenges that we have to face. And running a business is really hard, can be really high pressure. And lots of people that I speak to find they're just overwhelmed with the amount of tasks they have to do, the constant pressure around either sales or fundraising or whatever issue, HR issues, staffing, and it can be, there can be a huge amount of overwhelm, and that can cause people just to decide, this isn't for me. I'm not up for this. There's a reason why there's not many women doing this, because it's just too much, and I've got the kids to think of, and I'm just going to have an easy life and go and do something that isn't so difficult. And I think to try and manage that is to just build self-care into, again, it's another word that's bandied around a lot, but actually looking after ourselves and taking time. Sometimes what we don't need to do is give up. We just need to have a break and have a rest and have a change, and just allowing ourselves that space and that time to do that, and again, talking to people, keep those lines of communication open, having a support group around us, ideally of other like-minded women, and men, you know, but it is nice sometimes to talk to women who face exactly those same issues that you're facing, and kind of coming at it from the same perspective. So that's what I would say. I would say resilience and self-care. Self-care.
Thank you, Olivia. I know Fania has to leave now, so probably she might have left. So Chiraz, do you want to offer some final thoughts?
I think Fania is still here, and
Fania is still here. So can we catch you, Fania, before you go quickly?
Yeah, I'll thank you. I'll just say quickly, one thing is that your company infrastructure, the structure of your company, make sure you have a strong structure in place. Don't take any investment that is offered to you immediately without assessing you actually need that amount of money and what you're going to spend it on and where does that take you. Keep your eye on your product and your product again, because it's the product that makes the journey worth it and the impact that you'll see in people. So that's my final bit. And I have to say thank you so much and goodbye to everyone. Thank you so
much, Fania, for joining us. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much. Chiraz.
Yeah, I want to say women have all what it takes to be entrepreneur. I mean, if we can run a family and have kids, surely we can run a company. I mean, I can't see what would be what would be the difficult. We are risk takers. I mean, everything in life has a risk attached to it. I never believe in a job that is secure. No job is secure, and we saw it in the pandemic that actually anything can happen. So anything has a risk attached to it, and that's something we are used to it in our daily lives. Perseverance, I think, as women, we do show a big level of perseverance, and it's just what we need is a supportive ecosystem. And when I say ecosystem, it's the whole thing. Supportive family. I mean, we talked about kids and stuff. I mean, the role of the partner should be also as part of that, because being entrepreneurs becomes a lifestyle. It's not only you doing that. It's you know, kids understanding that, partner understanding that. So a supportive family, a supportive network, absolutely. Especially at the beginning when to start. I think we should not be hard with ourselves. I mean, nobody knows everything. So it's a journey we have to go through, and we're gonna make mistakes, and we're gonna learn through the way, and we're gonna wish that we have done things differently. But that's the beauty of it. It's a journey, and it's very, very rewarding. There are a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but when the highs are really high, it's very, very rewarding. And investment. So I think that's another part of the ecosystem that needs to be supportive. Having easier access to investment, and maybe women investing in women, or something that needs to be done, but having that also support, especially in the beginning. I mean, Fania talked a lot about how much struggle she had to really start. So that starting point, and believing in a woman that doesn't talk the language yet of finance, but has an idea and has the motivation, that should be you know, a good starting point for a good investment. I hope that's how a VC should or angel investor should see this.
Okay, thank you so much, Chiraz. And Linda, your final thoughts. Linda, would you like to?
Yeah, no, sorry, I just trying to unmute. Yeah, no, for me, it's been really, really interesting listening to all the different experiences and thoughts and comments from everyone. And I would like to try and harness and capture some of that in the kind of development programs that we provide for students and early career researchers, and you know, through PhD students, through to postdocs, contract researchers, early career researchers, and maybe, Simonetta, we should think of doing something like this as part of the training program to bring. So we every year we do a kind of career development day for early career and PhD researchers and PhD students, and we bring back alumni and people that have gone into amazing sorts of careers. But what we've never done is actually done a focus on being an entrepreneur. Yeah. And I think that would be something, it'd be really interesting to do something like this, but for as part of that sort of annual event that we do. So there may be an invitation to come back.
Invitation to come back, yeah.
Thank you. It's been really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Just as a final comments from Maria. Maria, is there something in this session that you've heard that you think you will take back, might be useful for you to take back to the bank, or something that perhaps you can offer as final comments?
Something to be able to take back. I think it's a lot that I will be able to bring back, because I mean, first of all, I'm extremely honored to be on this panel, because I mean, you are all amazing scientists, and I think it's great to hear your story, because of course we are in contact with a lot of companies, but and also in what we said, that women to women, it is a different type of conversation. So already there, I mean, it's a value in itself. But all the points that have been raised in terms of role models, in terms of this support at early stage, in terms of network, I mean, all this I will absolutely bring back and see also how we can support it really from the investor side. So no, my last point is really thank you very much. It has been extremely useful. So I'm more than happy to follow up as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's great. So yeah, we will be in touch, Maria, and thank you so much for taking part and also giving us a good insight into the work of the bank, and especially its focus on gender. I think I'll bring it now to a close. I really like to thank the panelists so much. I know you're all very busy. Thank you for giving up the time, but it's been a fantastic conversation. The video will be made available, and then with time, perhaps just do some extracts from the video as well, so people can dip in, and all will be made available on the website, or our Spinout's website. I've also, before we go, a big thank you to the colleagues, Mika, Ashley in particular in the research office, who have made all this possible. They set up all the technical, they looked at the technical things, and also the promotion, help with the promotion of the event as well. So thank you so much to everybody, and thank you so much also to our audience who have been joined us, and interesting comments made in the chat. Thank you, and goodbye to everyone, and good evening to everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Simonetta.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Simonetta. Bye.
Thank you.